And welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you to all the messages. How are we doing here? We're looking good. All right. You see the contact on the bottom of your screen. By the way, we don't have negative waves. I think I hit the wrong button. We'll add a wave there. We have 0 waves. Let me know how it sounds, how we're looking this morning, because we are live and local on Frankly Speaking, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. All right, we've got a lot to get to this morning. Let's get right to it. First of all, I wanted to give you an update on a local race that has been kind of lingering, and I've been asked a lot of times what ended up happening. Well, it just finally became official that in Corning, incumbent Democrat, 4th Ward Corning City Councilperson Marshall Hyde did defeat Lisa Illig-Homan by just 13 votes. This goes, of course, back to our point where voting matters. I'm just looking at my comments here, getting distracted. Excuse me. Yes, voting does matter. 13 votes. Imagine that. Now, you can't take anything away from Lisa Illig-Homan. So close. It's got to be heartbreaking. But congratulations to Marshall Hyde. We had both on right before the election. So I wanted to give you that update. The final tally, 150 to 137. Okay, we are all set. Thank you again to everyone messaging. Let's add a wave in there for all of our morning waves. Speaking of how important it is to vote, how about this? To add to that story about how important it is to vote. This is out of Washington State. A man went to the Thurston County ballot box. He was running for a council seat. And he decides, you know what? I am going to not vote for myself. I'm not going to vote. Not because he didn't think he was a good candidate. He thought it would be, and I quote, narcissistic or stacking a deck in your favor. And I've just got to say, because I find this really interesting that some people have that opinion. Because I know when I ran for Irwin Town Council, people go, can you vote for yourself? I said, of course. Now, this guy thinks it's narcissistic. I was very happy to vote for myself. Why do I bring this up out of Washington State? He ended up losing that race by 1 vote. So his vote was the deciding factor. And as he said now, your vote does count. It does matter. That is amazing. 246 to 247. And again, didn't want to be narcissistic and vote for himself. Let me tell you, if that's narcissism, I'm happy I voted for myself. And I will do it again, darn it. Okay, we've got a few things here about New York issues. We've also got a lot about the presidential race. Tonight is the debate. It's kind of tough to find, as a matter of fact, to watch tonight's Republican debate. I think I heard that it's on. I don't even want to say because I don't even know actually what outlet is broadcasting it. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Nikki Haley, of course, someone that we talk about on this program frequently because of the media's attention towards her. Well, she did some big fundraising on Wall Street just the other day. We'll mention that as well. First, before we go to our first break, we have a little bit of time here. Lately on the program, we've talked about disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo and the speculation that he definitely wants to run again for something. What that is, there's been a lot of speculation, whether it's Senate, which it looks like he's a little late on that against Gillibrand. Maybe it's mayor of New York City. Well, according to a new poll, fallen ex-governor Andrew Cuomo, and I think this speaks volumes about what we're dealing with in New York. You know, we had that lengthy discussion on Monday, maybe, about what can we do, and last week we talked about it as well, but what can we do about crime? What can we do about public safety and the things like bail reform or high taxes? Because it just seems like with a supermajority in Albany, meaning Democrats control the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor's mansion, what can we do? Well, going back to my beginning of the program, vote. I mean, it's as simple as that. We can't give up hope. I know it gets discouraging sometimes. But this does also speak to what we're dealing with, because when you have, first of all, what Governor Cuomo did when it came to the nursing home tragedy during COVID. And then you've got the scandals surrounding him. And yet, according to this poll, he would destroy Mayor Adams in New York City if they were to primary each other. 44% favored Andrew Cuomo, 24% Mayor Eric Adams. And this is a survey conducted by American Pulse and Research Polling. So think, and again, I'm not trying to discourage you this morning. All I'm saying is that's what we're dealing with when we talk about the city vote, kind of that blind allegiance, because we had the story just the other day that his second in command, or right-hand person, I guess, DeRosa, is one of the most favored politicians out there. If she were to run for office, people would support her. And I don't know if it's because the media didn't cover it when it came to the nursing home scandals, if they were willing to, I don't know how, but willing to forget the real scandals that Cuomo had surrounding him, not just the nursing home scandal, which was, I think, disqualification enough, but I don't know if it's just that willfulness of saying, well, I like the Cuomo name, or I know the Cuomo name. But it is important to know that if he were to challenge Senator Gillibrand, he would lose that. In the matchup, 49% of Democrats prefer Gillibrand, who is up for re-election. We mentioned on the program the other day that there is a Republican that is going to challenge her. His title is a billionaire businessman, is how they're presenting him. I don't know a lot about him, but I'm going to try to do my best to get that information to you. So Gillibrand favored over Cuomo. And again, he has not declared any office that he's seeking. But Gillibrand would be at 49%, Cuomo at 35%. Do you think, I mean, he's got a windfall when it comes to money. Do you think Governor Cuomo runs for office again? And if so, what office? It would be very difficult for him to run for governor again, especially against a Kathy Hochul with his scandal, running against a woman. That's why a lot of people thought that he would not most likely challenge Gillibrand either. But could you see him run for mayor of New York City? That's probably the most logical. But there's always that difficulty of primarying a fellow Democrat. So does he maybe think about running for comptroller or something like that that's maybe not as in the news all the time, but very, very powerful? Because we know his opinion on power. Okay, we do have to take a short break. Stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. After this, please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're just working out a few little kinks here, and I appreciate everybody who have been reaching out to tell me that everything sounds good, looks good. We're just getting a few little bugs worked out as we are live and local from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street and Corner. You saw that beautiful view from our roof cam right before we came on the air. Okay, let's get back to it. Oh, by the way, in comment to my question about former, now disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, if he'll run for something, and you know the numbers that we're looking at, and it looks like he could win mayor of New York City. This is from a viewer. It is New York. They would elect a ham sandwich. Yes, I think that's in reference to Democrats would elect a ham sandwich when it came to the AOC seat. So thank you for that point. Okay, let's get back to it. Oh, we got a few other messages here. Anything? Okay, we're good. All right. So I know this has been making the rounds since yesterday, and it does pique your interest. So President Biden saying that he would not be running for president if Donald Trump wasn't running for president doesn't really exude confidence from a man. I mean, this is an exact quote. If Trump wasn't running, I'm not sure I'd be running. Well, there's a level there of ego too. So that he believes he's the only one that can beat Trump. Now, he did beat Trump last go around, so maybe that's why he thinks that. But I don't know how you look at the polls and the real general concern from all parties, all voters about President Biden's mental health, physical health, and not saying maybe there's somebody out there that stands a better chance. But at the same time, what does he do? If he steps back, it's probably going to be Harris, and that doesn't look good for a Trump defeat. The comment made during a fundraiser, well, according to sources, we'll put it this way, according to sources familiar with the matter, it definitely took Biden campaign officials and advisors by surprise. I would think so. I'm sure that's not a line that you wanted him to ad-lib or go off the cuff. As a matter of fact, one top campaign advisor said, "Yikes." That's their exact quote. Yikes. Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the problems that you have with the president's campaign. There's already major concerns from within his own party when it comes to, he's been very quiet, hasn't been doing much on the campaign side. But I got to believe they think last time the cliche was that he was doing it from his basement and did not get out that often. Maybe they think that's still a winning strategy, but I don't think, coupled with what the polls are showing us about people's concern with his mental health, I don't think that's a winning strategy necessarily, but that seems to be the avenue they're going down. Seems to be the way that they're handling it thus far. And that's why a lot of people have speculated about Governor Newsom seeing, could he decide not to run? Now, I know former President Trump said yesterday at the town hall with Hannity that he doesn't believe that Joe will ultimately be the nominee. But I don't, it's too late if you're going to start a whole, it's not too late. It's very, very close to too late if they wanted to start a whole new candidate campaigning, meaning a Governor Newsom or whoever the case may be. But that's what's kind of interesting, that you're starting to see more and more articles like this. Newsom cements his place as a star for the Democrats. California Governor Gavin Newsom is cementing his status as a star in the Democrat Party, emerging as a top defender of President Biden and lifting his national profile amid speculation about future White House ambitions. Yes, it's definitely future ambitions, next go around. But I think originally, because the shadow campaign started so early, I think it was more of a, what if Biden decides he doesn't want to run, or heaven forbid, something health related happens, and maybe Newsom could ease right in there. Hence the reason why he agreed to the debate with Hannity. Now, what's the end game for that if you're not running? I think, was it Fetterman from PA that even said, hey, you got another guy running for, and he's a Democrat, but you've got another guy running. He just doesn't have the courage to admit it, which is Governor Newsom. But I will say, and this is a troubling trend, not just from California, where Newsom is governor, but also I think in general, and this is something I wanted to bring up yesterday, but we ran out of time on the program. You're seeing cancellations throughout the country of Hanukkah celebrations, and the New York Post had a great piece yesterday, maybe the day before, talking about how you cannot keep giving in to the bigots and the anti-Semites. And that's exactly what Governor Newsom did here by canceling a Christmas tree lighting ceremony over pro-Palestine protest. Democrat California Governor, as you know, Gavin Newsom, canceled a Christmas tree lighting ceremony at the state capitol. Newsom made the move for fear of safety of children and families that would be present at the ceremony. Last month, for instance, you had, well, look at it, Macy's Day Parade. You had it at the Rockefeller tree lighting ceremony as well, where you had these pro-Palestinian marchers chanting horrible things, horrible signs in New York City just last week. So, again, Governor Newsom caving, if you will, as the New York Post put it so eloquently yesterday, caving to the bigots. We've got a lot more to talk about. We're breezing through a lot today. It's just you and I. I didn't book any guests because I wanted to make sure that everything went smoothly with our new equipment, and we're getting there. We're getting there. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody who reached out. Again, you see the number on the bottom of your screen at any point. And thank you, by the way, for the virtual waves. But anybody that wants to comment on the topics that we're discussing or just in general, I know there's a lot more to discuss. But before we do that, and it ties in good, I'm going to run a little late into this break, but it ties in really well with that last piece, because one place that they're not concerned and they're not caving to bigots, there is going to be an amazing celebration in Hornell. We received this from our friend Mayor John Buckley. It's Christmas at the Square. There's going to be music, lights, coming up on December 15th for all of our friends in Hornell and the surrounding area at 6 p.m. at Union Square Park. You're going to have the Hornell High School Show and Jazz Choir and the Intermediate Select Choir and Color Guard, as well as Ellen Oaks Kerr. So mark your calendar, December 15th at 6 p.m. What a special Christmas celebration in Hornell. Now, let's take that break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Beautiful view of Marcus Street there. Gets you in the Christmas spirit. Let's go back to that for just a moment as we're talking about all these Christmas activities. Doesn't that look nice? That's where we're broadcasting from, live in the Hesselson studio. I am your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just getting a couple of little bugs worked out, and I appreciate everybody who keeps reaching out to let us know. We're getting there. So thank you. All right. And let's get back to it. So we were talking about the presidential race a little bit, kind of just loosely touching on it. Did you see that Liz Cheney, man, I'm telling you, Liz Cheney has made a name for herself on this. She really has made her whole career about going after former President Trump at this point. She made the end of her career in Washington about that as well. Now she is, for lack of a better word, threatening, or at least suggesting that she's considering a third-party bid. There's a huge amount of work to be done after this election cycle, she said, whether it's rebuilding the Republican Party. Now, again, we talked about ego earlier with Biden. Think about the ego here as well, which says she believes the Republican Party needs to be rebuilt. And what would you assume then? To her likeness, to what she believes it should be. Which increasingly looks like, maybe an impossible task, or helping to begin a new party that's very focused on what the Republican Party used to stand for before this cult of personality. But right now, and in this election cycle, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure Donald Trump's not elected. Now, she told Anderson Cooper this at CNN's AC 360. I know I've mentioned this before, and I don't want to go too far in the rabbit hole with this. But think about the outlets like CNN and so many others in the mainstream media and how they treated Liz Cheney's father, Dick Cheney. And yet, those are the shows and those are the outlets that she's going to promote or hawk her new book. I always find that weird. Mitt Romney's very similar. Mitt Romney, I believe it was CNN as well, when he released that op-ed about don't vote for Trump, vote for Hillary kind of idea. And you thought, Mitt Romney, isn't CNN the one that ran with you having the dog tied to the roof nonstop and suggested that someone died of cancer because of Mitt Romney, and then you had the binders full of women, but yet they still go wanting to be liked by the media so bad. There's something interesting in the Republican Party about that, wanting to be liked by the mainstream media. Talking heads is almost like a infatuation with them. But I'll continue with what she had to say. We're at a moment where the possibility of a third-party run is something we have to consider more than we ever have before because of the threat that Trump poses. But I also think we have to ensure that at some point we're unified against him. So now it's not about winning as a Republican. It's not about anything else. But as you see by these statements, that it is all about the defeat of Trump in her mind. This is very much the same mindset that Mitt Romney had back when, well, throughout all of Trump's presidency and before. But I also think we have to ensure that at some point we're unified against him. It has to be a situation where we say, I don't care what your view is on this issue or that issue or whatever the big policy issue is. If you care about the Constitution and you're going to defend it, we have to work and vote together for that. So never mind about the political issues. That's very interesting. Never mind if someone supports something you're adamantly opposed to, because it's about ensuring that Trump doesn't get reelected. So now, will we see a scenario where Cheney joins with Joe Manchin? You know, when Joe Manchin retired, even more red flags went up, and people thought maybe he is going to run third party with that No Labels group. I don't know if this mentions No Labels specifically, but I saw something yesterday that suggested she could be looking at that No Labels option. If you're not familiar with No Labels is an organization that believes if you have maybe a Democrat at the top of the ticket or Republican, but on the vice president, it's got to be the other party. So with Democrat and Republican, more moderate Republican, more moderate Democrat, if they ran together, is there a chance to actually win as a third party? No Labels contention is that there is a chance. I would love to hear what you think. Is there a chance for a third party? Liz Cheney couldn't win re-election. So I don't really think she's the best person to ask about that. But I think there's that taste of when you get to where you like all the attention you're getting from the media by attacking Trump. Because, I mean, this is throughout history. It's not just a Trump issue. If you look at John McCain was the maverick because he would go after Republicans, so the media loved him for that until they didn't anymore when he received the nomination, and then some horrific articles came out right off the jump. So it's interesting, going back to my point about Republicans wanting to be liked by the media so much, and how often that is a failure. Now, we talked a little bit before about, and I'm kind of jumping around and I apologize, Gavin Newsom canceling that Christmas tree lighting because of the pro-Palestinian protests. What I have here is if you were paying attention on yesterday, the presidents of Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania and MIT were called before the House Committee on Education and the Workforce to answer questions about the anti-Semitism running amok on college campuses. We're going to tell you about that when we come back. Not a lot about it because we have a lot of things to get to this morning, but I do not want to run too late. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, look at that beautiful view of Marcus Street as we broadcast from the Hesselson studio. I am your host, Frank Acom. I know. I'll hold on. I'll come back on screen. I just like looking at that very Christmassy photo of Marcus Street. Not photo, live roof cam, as a matter of fact. Okay. Oh, one other thing. Speaking of Christmas, before I get into this about colleges and the anti-Semitism, because I want to start this segment on a positive note. You may have heard me mention it on yesterday's show. I'm really excited about this. Coming up on December 15th, we are having, and we've got to find a different name for it. It's not necessarily a telethon like you would think of a telethon like Jerry Lewis, but we're having a special broadcast, 2 hours, right here on Big Fox. It's a 2-hour, Frankly Speaking, and it's going to help the Salvation Army of Corning. And when I say Salvation Army of Corning, I just want to clarify, that's the official name, but it is Steuben County, and they do such amazing work. And when I bring to you some of the numbers of the families that they help. So we're going to have it, but it's going to be an event. It's not just going to be a telethon. It's going to have, we're going to have music. We're going to have guests. It's definitely a program you are going to want to tune into, and it's 2 hours. So it's 6 to 8. Mark your calendars. December 15th. We'll have a kettle out here, so maybe on your way into work, if you want to drop off some money for the Salvation Army, or we'll have phone numbers and things like that you can contact to help out the Salvation Army of Corning. They do such amazing work, and I hope that you'll be a part of that broadcast, meaning that you'll stop by and drop off money in the kettle. But now we get back to the bad news. So you've got Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, and MIT. Their presidents were called before the House Committee on Education and the Workforce to answer how their pristine universities have turned into hotbeds of anti-Semitism. And watching the hearing, as the New York Post put it, the whole debacle is a remarkable display of elite higher education's fall from grace. I guess I could put that up on the screen. And how their years-long abandonment of free speech has allowed radicalism and anti-Semitism to fester on campus. Where free speech dies, institutional stupidity takes its place. And you've had some professors, and we've had them not physically on the program, but we've had quotes from them on the program saying, I didn't know it had gotten this bad. Well, it's too little, too late in many instances. And some of these back and forth, Elise Stefanik, if you haven't watched it, look it up. Elise Stefanik did a great job in saying, calling for the annihilation of Jewish people, doesn't that go against your policies at these universities? And she couldn't get us straight. Of course it does. It was difficult to watch. But again, this piece from the New York Post, every time these students raised their fist for a progressive cause, and I thought this was interesting, their professors and administrators came to their support, canceling classes to accommodate student protesters, as UPenn professors did when Trump won, or sending campus-wide emails of solidarity, and even stepping in on behalf of student protesters, interrupting events. Yeah, they were very much talking about being champions for free speech in this hearing yesterday. But as it's been said a million times by a million different people, that is not the case when a conservative speaker comes to campus. Free speech isn't quite as important then, and oftentimes they are shouted down or shut right out. But I thought this was a really good point, and I've said this on the program before, where if you really want to be rock and roll, if you really want to be punk, you really want to be anti-establishment, then you don't want to be a Democrat, right? This isn't even a biased political statement, but that's who's in authority. That's who's in power on so many levels, on college campuses, and the media, etc. And that's what this piece says. Are you really speaking truth to power when administrators are cheering you along? There's precisely nothing edgy about that whatsoever. Young radicals, want to push the envelope, the Post says. And when their professors and authority figures are themselves young radicals who never grew up, the next generation will grasp for the next frontier, and hence this huge rise in anti-Semitism, looking for the most shocking thing that they can, for lack of a better word, support. Today's professors are no longer predominantly older, bow tie wearing classical liberals. They're critical theorists with nose piercing and a distaste for Western values. Denigrating the founding fathers and wearing Che Guevara t-shirts isn't radical anymore. Desperate transgressors need to dig deep in search of an edgy cause. And they found one in the Israel-Palestine conflict. And that's to my point, saying that they have to keep outdoing themselves in quote-unquote edginess or shock value. That's why we had, and it was shocking, when you had so many people going to TikTok thinking they were brilliant, almost scholars, by saying you have to watch this video or listen to this audio of a letter to America from Osama bin Laden saying that they supported what he was saying, or that almost that he was ahead of his time. That's what level of shock value they need to go to, because they have to keep outdoing each other. It's like I've said on this program so many times, to be the coolest in today's culture in the classroom, you have to be the most aggrieved, perhaps the most offended, and in this case, support the most caustic cause that you can. Today's campus radicals have stooped to so low that they're celebrating the words of Osama bin Laden. Harvard, Penn, and other elite campuses must contend with the radicalism they've fostered on their campuses. Now that they're finally paying the price with donors pulling their dollars, perhaps they will. And that has been a major, there has been a major backlash against these colleges, because they're used to getting a lot of money. You look at some of those numbers, it's staggering. And that's just not there. I read something the other day where one of the ways that you can help get maybe your kid, your grandkid into some of these elite universities would sometimes cause like 20 million. Like here's a $20 million donation, and oh hey, he may not have the grades, she may not be the best student, whoever, but they all of a sudden got into this elite university. That cost, according to a piece I read yesterday, is now down from 20 million to 2 million. But then they wonder why people don't want to go to college campuses anyway, or college anyway, because you have this kind of radicalism. Imagine paying not just 20 million or 2 million, imagine paying normal tuition and seeing that this is what your son or daughter is being taught. I will continue though. But as much as these university presidents might like to sweep the issue under the rug because they want those donations coming back, a knee-jerk recommitment to free speech can't instantaneously remedy the polarization that's flourished in its absence. Let's take another break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, look at that beautiful view overlooking our Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Akin. I'm going to get you into the Christmas spirit, as I had mentioned. Speaking of Christmas spirit, December 15th, tune in right here, 2 hours, as we help the Salvation Army of Corning. Okay, Nikki Haley has raised over $500,000 at an event with Wall Street executives. She's getting a lot of money coming in. A lot of Democrats as well donating to her. We've talked about it in the past that many people believe that Nikki Haley is the alternative, especially considering she's rising and DeSantis is going down a little bit, that she is the alternative to former President Trump. The sheer amount of money Haley raised reflects the formidable and financially viable campaign she is creating. There's, I think, a really good point, because you'll see these articles about Nikki Haley, that she's rising, you get this, look, a formidable and financially viable campaign. Really, some pretty strong words, and a lot of articles praising her. And as I've said before, I like Nikki Haley, but it always concerns me when the media praises any Republican. But David Axelrod, of course, former senior advisor to Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, he said there's a lot of good news for Nikki Haley. A lot of good news. But here's the bad news. Now, what do you think that will be? You probably, it's in the back of your mind. Because what he says, hey, there's a lot of good things. Just raking in the money, doing great. The bad news, though, and this is something we brought up on the program a lot, because remember, the media tries to make, a horse race out of this, because there's a lot of money to be had there, that the primaries are exciting for them. They can get a lot of eyeballs watching them. But the bad news for Haley is that she is still about 50 points behind the former president, who has made himself the other big winner of the first 3 Republican debates simply by leaving the stage to others. Yes, some people question that move at the beginning. I think it's ultimately proved to be a good thing for the Trump campaign. Now, tonight is the Republican debate. Of course, former President Trump will not be there. It's kind of difficult to find where to watch it, but we will bring you the information tomorrow on the program of the takeaways, if you will, or what you may have missed if you did not watch. And by the way, I don't think we've had a chance to mention it on the program. Doug Burgum, North Dakota governor, did drop out of the race. So there's only 4 people debating tonight. You have DeSantis, Haley, Christie, and Ramaswamy will be duking it out, so to speak. Now, Trump used that money that Haley's raking in from Wall Street to suggest that it's Democrats, as the New York Post put it, funding Haley and contributing to DeSantis to keep the former president out of the 2024 GOP race. That was with his town hall discussion with Sean Hannity. You know what? We'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We are running a little bit late, as we always tend to do at the end of the program, because it just moves so quickly. And thank you to everybody who have been commenting throughout the program about the topics we've been discussing throughout the morning. So, as I mentioned, Trump was at the town hall saying that it's DeSantis and Haley are getting money from Democrats. Here are the top takeaways according to Fox News when it comes to the Hannity town hall. Man, Hannity's in the news a lot between that debate. And anyway, Trump says, and I mentioned this, alluded to this earlier in the program, Trump predicted that Biden ultimately wouldn't be the Democrats' nominee. I personally don't think he makes it, okay? I haven't said that. I'm saving it for the big town hall. I've never really said that. I personally don't think he makes it. I think he's in bad shape physically. He added before joking about a previous instance in which Biden said he'd like to take Trump to the, quote, back of the barn, meaning he wanted to fight him. You remember when Biden went through that for a while, where he was very tough talking? Trump joked that Biden would fall over if he simply blew on him. I personally don't think he makes it physically. I watched him at the beach. He wasn't able to lift a beach chair, which is meant for children to lift. And mentally, I would say he is possibly equally as bad and maybe even worse. Now, there's a lot of controversy because Hannity kind of threw him a softball saying, you're not going to abuse your power or in the name of retribution against anybody. And then the former president said, except for day one. I want to close the board and I want to drill. Well, Hannity goes, that's not retribution. At which Trump said, I love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no. Other than day one. We're closing the border and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator. Okay? All right. We got to take our last break. Then we're going to wrap things up, go through a lot of topics quickly. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for all the messages. And look, we did good on the waves, the virtual waves and in-person waves. Wrapping up on the discussion of the town hall with Sean Hannity, where the former president said about Nikki Haley as I mentioned, and Ron DeSantis taking money from Democrats. He said that's the only thing they're good at, cheating on elections and great talking points. Okay. He also made the prediction that he will win Iowa. By the way, I wanted to mention this earlier. We don't have time to get into it, but FBI Director Chris Wray has warned that the United States is facing the highest risk of a terrorist attack in years in the aftermath of the October 7th Hamas atrocities in Israel. And he did say, and he did mention the open, porous borders as being a factor in that. He says we are facing threats from a rogues gallery of terrorists. He said enough fentanyl has flooded in from Mexico to kill every American, and admitted he was, quote, concerned migrant crossings are adding to the terrorists' risks. There's a piece by Michael Goodwin at the Post this morning, if you have a moment. Biden is risking Israel's security and its future to boost his and Harris's 2024 re-election hopes. And this is one thing we were concerned about when he started to see the polling and some of the threats and like that people won't vote for him if he's so strong on Israel. Because let's face it, as Michael Goodwin said, the polls inadvertently tell an ugly truth. The anti-Semites chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free on college campuses are mostly Democrats. And now they have Biden's full attention because he's desperate and he doesn't want to lose those votes. So he is weakening. We are out of time. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you for all the comments. We'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.